Provided in high definition by freeconferencecallhd.com. You are the only participant in the conference.
Richard has begun crying.
All right. Uncle Richard, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Awesome.
The recording has started.
All right, friends and families, once again, we are very excited to welcome all of you to the month of November. In the month of November, we are looking at a very important topic. But before I get into the topic, I wanted to start with a prayer. So let us bow down our head with prayer. Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, we give you glory. We give you praise. We thank you for the opportunity to be in your presence. We pray, oh God, even as we gather to study and to learn and to enhance our marriages, Lord, you will join us. You will strengthen Mr. and Mrs. Crab even as they take us through this hour or so of learning. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So, guys, uh, what are some of the things we do that makes our partner or our spouses feel unappreciated? How does one deal with someone who takes you for granted? What are some of the warning signals that we need to heed? Well, we are once again privileged this month of November to have Mr. and Mrs. Crab to take us through a learning. And today's or this month's seminar is entitled, Are You Taking Those Closest to You for Granted? Without wasting much time, I hand over to Mr. and Mrs. Crab to take us through learning. Thank you.
It's always a joy for us to link up with you. Our listeners around the world. It's a privilege because you do have a choice what to do with your time, and we're grateful that you do choose to spend this time with us. So let's begin. Granted is very common. Any type of relationship, whether with a romantic partner, in a marriage, with a family member, a friend, or a co-worker. When we take someone for granted, we assume that they will always be there for us, that they will always put up with our behavior, and that they will always forgive us. This type of understanding, you can even call it a mindset, can be damaging to the relationship and can lead to a lack of appreciation and respect. The dictionary defines being taken for granted as a situation in which someone or something is valued too lightly. When someone is taken for granted, their true worth is neither seen, appreciated, or adequately celebrated. What does take for granted mean in terms of a relationship? The phrase take for granted for our purposes refers to one or both partners acting in a way that makes the other person feel unappreciated. This behavior also assumes that the relationship is fine. It's okay. even without any acts of gratitude or appreciation. No time or effort is taken to ensure that you are adequately thanked, looked after, listened to, and made to feel special. But every person likes to be appreciated, even those who say they don't mind if they're not thanked for what they do. We all want to be listened to and not ignored. We all like to feel special and not disrespected. Sad fact is that very often, most often I should say, it is those closest to us that we treat poorly in a way that we would not like to be treated. But every person, think about it. Do you take decisions without considering your partner's views? Maybe you even ignore your partner's ideas, expecting that they will go along with you, or have to accept that you've already decided. If you do, you're taking them for granted. The mindset about taking others for granted is what leads to words like, "Oh, don't worry, she will understand." "Oh, my husband, he won't mind." Really? So why is it that we take those closest to us for granted? The commonest reason is that we often fall prey to what is said, what is the popular saying, familiarity breeds contempt. This is the psychological condition which plays out in that the more familiar we are, the more we know someone, the more likely we are to take them for granted and to show them less appreciation and respect. We become comfortable in enjoying our expectations being met regularly. For example, the phone is answered when we call them. Food is ready when we get home. So, why worry about the person who prepares the food? Our clothes are washed. The new clothes, they seem to appear in the drawers. Children are well taken care of. Money is provided when needed. And a partner cancels their plans to accommodate our short notices to do something together. We seldom pause to think of how life would be without all these benefits, which we should rather call blessings. According to a study conducted by the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, people tend to value and appreciate things that are scarce or that they have to work for. Just cast your mind a few, but not too long ago, before COVID. People who weren't people who usually, would go to town and hang out in the mall or something, suddenly began to, they're imprisoning us, they're preventing us from going out. Suddenly, we appreciated being able to get out of our houses, our homes. The very people who will say, "No, me, I don't like going anywhere." Suddenly we felt like we were being deprived. It means that when we have constant access to something, or someone for that matter, we're less likely to value that person and more likely to take that person for granted. An article by author Nitesh Sakpal notes that another psychological factor that can contribute to taking people for granted is what he calls a self-serving bias. This bias refers to the tendency to view ourselves in a positive light and to attribute our successes to our own abilities. while attributing our failures to external factors. And in some of our relationships, it is the fault of our spouse. It is the fault of our partner when things don't go well. When everything is great, we did it. And we do not consider the contribution. The person who's able to ace the exam thinks they studied hard and they did great because they're smart, they're intelligent. But they fail to realize that we're there to be no one, preparing meals. And if they had a family, taking care of the children, so they would have time to study, it wouldn't have been possible. We take each other easily for granted. And then, how about some social factors? In some cultures, it is more common to show appreciation and gratitude, while in others, it may be seen as unnecessary or even appropriate. Additionally, some of our social norms can dictate certain behaviors in relationships, such as gender roles or expectations of reciprocity. In other words, when somebody's done something that you do good, for example, you also need to do good to them. Some of us have grown up with strict gender roles or strictly defined gender roles, and we're stuck in them. We recommend last month's podcast, Culture, Tradition, and how it affects, it influences our relationships and marriages. Culture, tradition, and how it influences our marriages. We recommend you listen to that, because we dealt with that in detail. Mm-hmm. But here, we have the social aspect of people using the level of power in the relationship, because some power relationships are defined by our cultures or the societies in which we even live. See, when one person has more power than the other, they may feel entitled to take the other person for granted or to use them for their own benefit. And so we belittle a partner's plans and insist on them agreeing to our plans, wishes, and desires. This may be due to our pride or a feeling of superiority. It is very common for a man or husband to be easily guilty of such behavior, and yet he may justify it or explain it away by saying, "Oh, that's because I'm the head. I'm the head in this marriage." But does that mean you can trample over your partner, your spouse? Some of our behavior may stem also from a sense of entitlement, which plays out this way. For example, a person may say, "I bring in more money, therefore I don't have to do what my spouse wants. What can he do without me?" Then there is the ever-present, more modern impact of technology. We don't think about it. But the impact of technology on our relationships can also contribute to our taking each other for granted. See, while technology has made it easier to stay connected with others, it has also made it easier for us to take each other for granted. For example, social media platforms can create a false sense of connection and intimacy, which can lead to a lack of effort in maintaining our present relationships. That is why people begin talking to other people on Facebook, on whatever medium you can think of with technology. And they end up putting more effort into those hours, into that emotions, yes, so they begin an emotional affair. So, I haven't slept with the person. I haven't even tagged the person. I haven't even seen the person, been with the person in the same place. Yes, but the feelings, emotions, desires
that ought to be with the husband or wife are now being transferred to somebody who's only separated by a screen, even though they may be thousands of miles away. So even though we may assume that our spouse is always there, always connected, always available, we do not do much. Because, I can call my husband anytime. I can talk to my wife anytime. But do we really? And so we are going through what the U.S. Surgeon General and, more research is coming out today talking about the great loneliness epidemic. In fact, just a couple of days ago, I think it was Friday or so, the World Health Organization declared loneliness an epidemic. It's now official. It may not be killing people like COVID, but yes, people are dying slowly because they're not, even though they're connected, this is supposed to be the most connected generation in history. But we are also the loneliest. Sadly, sometimes the loneliness even has to do with people who are married and the one who have to stay sharing the same bed. Because, yes, they may be lying right beside each other, but each person may be connected to other people thousands of miles away. And emotionally, they may be so far apart, and yet lying right next to each other. Additionally, as I'm just describing, the constant distractions and notifications from our phones and other devices can make it difficult to be present and attentive in our relationships. Yes, we may be physically present with someone, but mentally distracted by our technology, which can make it easier to take them for granted. Maybe you've gone through it. If you haven't, then maybe you don't have a phone, or your partner doesn't have a phone, or some device, that they focus on more than you. Over and over, we deal with it ourselves, yes. My wife and myself, we have to discipline ourselves, drop that phone, put it aside, and listen to me. Listen to her. It is something we all have to do. And how many times haven't you been talking with somebody and then the phone rings or a beep comes and then they look away and suddenly they're looking on their phone and they're texting back. And some people are great. They can text without even looking on the keyboard, But where is the concentration? Is it on the person who's talking with them or on who they're talking to on the phone? So how do we deal with someone who takes us for granted? These are a few tips, some things to think about. First, they're not in any order, but they're things to think about. It's important to do things because we want to, not because we just want to please our partner or for the sake of peace. We hear it just so often. Well, I decided, let me just do it for the sake of peace. And yet there is no peace. And then we also need to learn to say no. It isn't everything we have to go along with. And we'll say a little more about this later. And it's important in connection with that to also take care of ourselves. Put your feelings also first sometimes. Not always, I would say that, but the many times we need to put our own feelings first. You see, while there are times we have to sacrifice, yes, there is a problem in a relationship when one person or one partner is the only one who always or most often has to accept what the other wants to be done, or the one, for example, to apologize when things go wrong, even when they're not at fault. This also means we have to communicate openly and honestly. So if you feel somebody is taking you for granted, say it. Don't keep quiet. Ignoring what hurts you or what you're uncomfortable with will not make it go away. or cause the person to stop. In fact, they may take your silence or lack of a protest as approval. The proverbial silence means consent. So learn to speak up for yourself rather than going through other people. There are sometimes people feel, why didn't she tell me? Why didn't you tell me? Why is somebody else telling me? And then you have those who say, don't tell anybody anything about our relationship. Well, if you are in one of those relationships, which we frown on, we don't recommend, if you can't tell anyone else, surely you must be able to tell your partner. And if you can't do that also, there is a more serious problem. Though the truth may be hard for a partner, it is important that we all learn to speak the truth in love, or we may be taken for granted. It's also important to tell each other about our needs. You see, if somebody is taking you for granted and you need for them to say thank you for something you do for them, this person always asks you, do this for me, do that for me, and they never show appreciation, they never even say it, they never even acknowledge what you're doing. It's important to let them know. Let them know. Tell the person about what you need to hear, what you need to know from them. None of us were brought into this world only to fulfill other people's needs. Everyone, you also, have needs as well. Then it's important to set some personal boundaries. There's some things I will not do, regardless of who you are. Nope, I'm not going to do it. If anything goes with you, people may not respect your boundaries, and they might try to push you into things that you aren't interested in. But each one of us has to be disciplined in keeping our own boundaries and not always change our minds to suit others, especially those who try to get us to behave like them. And it may not be a spouse, but it may be a friend, a close friend, sometimes even a sibling. And sometimes in close relationships with some spouses, we shouldn't feel like that. What do you mean I shouldn't feel like that? I feel that way. Why don't you want to acknowledge how I feel? And if you don't want to acknowledge that I feel hurt, or not that you have even hurt me, or that I just feel sad about something, then it means you don't care about my feelings. That's a way of taking people for granted. My feelings don't matter to you. So how important am I as a person to you? So speak up when somebody upsets you. Telling the person right away or at the earliest opportunity can prevent them from doing it again in the future. Even though it might be easy to let seemingly little things slide, a partner may feel that they can get away with doing more and more. And surely, just as we all human beings do, somebody gets away with 1 centimeter today, tomorrow they might try 2, 3, maybe 1 meter. And more they'll be getting away with things that hurt us more and more. Or they may not even hurt us as in wounding us, but we may simply be unhappy. Why continue allowing people to make us that way? If someone does something that you don't appreciate, it's important to let the person know what action upsets you. What about it? Some of us speak round in the, these things that you do these days, I don't know where this relationship is going. You have said nothing useful. Be specific and let the person know what is going on. For example, you could say, it really hurt my feelings when you didn't say thank you when I gave you your gift, because I put a lot of thought into it. I'd appreciate it if we could be more grateful moving forward. That's not only mentioning or stating what you're unhappy with, but you've also provided in that presentation a solution and what the person can do to improve the situation. If they listen, the relationship improves. It's also important to keep plans that you make, especially plans that you make with family and friends. All of us have family, all of us have friends. Yes, I hear somebody say, oh, but when you marry, your marriage takes precedence. I'm not talking, that's not my argument here. What I'm talking about is if you always cancel plans so you can be with your partner, that person may expect it. And the problem is that they are overlooking, ignoring, or even, to put it even stronger, disrespecting the point that you also have made plans. And if you've made prior plans or have commitments that you enjoy, we would say stick with them and let anyone else know that your time is important to you. This means that as couples, we share these things ahead of time. You don't spring it on each other at the last minute. Because yes, that's taking our partner for granted. So what can we do to improve our relationships? Probably the most important thing we can do as a foundation is to show respect for each other. To show respect for each other. We often hear about men talking, husbands saying, oh, my wife doesn't respect me. Then you talk with them for a while. Sometimes you talk with the wife and you realize the wife also feels disrespected. Let's show respect for each other. So men, and if I may just take a few moments to talk about Christian men, for example, are quick to quote from the Bible, Ephesians 5:22. Wives submit. The wife should respect her husband. Okay, that's Ephesians 5:33. But the same verse 33 talks about the husband showing love to the wife. That is ignored. You see. So, as the saying goes, it cuts both ways. But we do have a verse in the Bible that talks about respect for women. It's 1 Peter 3, verse 7, that men also, husbands should also respect their wives. Yes. How come we don't hear about that? So let's show respect for each other. In the Bible, the Apostle Paul writes in his letter to the Romans, chapter 12 and verse 3, and I quote, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. This is addressed to both men and women. So it's important for us to, end quote, it's important to respect a partner or a spouse, first of all, as a person made in God's image also, So we respect them as people, human beings. We respect their ideas and views. And regardless of how strange or crazy they may seem to us, I'm talking of their ideas, we still respect them. We also respect that they sometimes disagree with us. Why is this very important? The fact is that if both of us agreed on everything, if two of you are in a relationship and both of you agreed on everything, as my wife puts it, either one of you or both of you may be lying to each other. She says, even identical twins disagree. Why do we expect that a spouse would agree with us all the time? So let's remember, the person who feels respected is motivated to do more and better for the one who shows them respect. I want to repeat this. A person who feels respected is motivated to do more and better for the one who shows them respect. And showing respect means we value the person. We're not taking them for granted. That they have something to offer to the relationship we have with them. In fact, not just to the relationship, they have something to offer to our lives. Then next, we need to practice, every one of us, expressing gratitude and appreciation to the people in our lives. Practice, yes, because practice makes perfect. We do it over and over again. This can be as simple as saying thank you for a glass of water. Or when the person hands you over a spoon to dish some food. I must add, no one has been found to be allergic to the words please or thank you. Either saying them or hearing them said. We all value when somebody says please, when somebody says thank you to us. We also need to consider each other's ideas and interests important. Not only our ideas or interests. Again, in the Bible, the Apostle Paul writes in his letter to the Philippians, chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. He says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. So let's focus on our close relationships. It's important to make time for each other. Sometimes just to be in each other's company. Spending time together rather than with technology, which has people on the other side of the screen. Couples are often guilty of making time for children, church, friends, even people we don't know well. Practically anything or anyone we consider important except for each other. And yet, we're the ones who have pledged to spend the rest of our lives together. Or maybe you're planning to do so. So how much time are you giving to each other? And isn't it ironic that before marriage especially, we don't seem to complain about making time for each other. But then after marriage, it seems there's always something else pulling us away from each other. So, for each one of us, we need to dedicate some of our free time to each other. Not only to watching the game or playing the game, yes, or being with other people or talking to them. What about the one to whom we have pledged our lives? Let's dedicate some of our free time to each other and do something that one of us has expressed interest in doing, especially if we haven't done that activity before. Do something different. Just think about it. Here's what one writer puts, he said, when you first started dating, it is likely that you tried many different experiences together. Maybe a sport, a recreational activity, or traveling. There is no reason to stop doing these things. Children are not a good enough excuse. There is always much to learn about one another at any stage of life. We really like that phrase, so I'll repeat it. There's always much to learn about one another at any stage in life, young or old. And I'll give you a great example. Last month, We had a marriage weekend. It was actually a whole week, by Zoom during the weekdays, and then we had a weekend together, with a group of people in Detroit. It was a church in Detroit, Michigan, in the U.S. that invited us. And it was wonderful to see the people who were there. And among the people who came, different ages of people. And it was just beautiful to see that. Different ages of people were learning. And then a couple of weeks later, we had another one in Chicago. That was amazing. And there was an 80-year-old man there. 80, with his wife. They had come to a marriage program to learn how to improve their marriage. So my 30-something-year-olds, why aren't you learning? You might be 50 years younger than this man who was still looking to improve his relationship. And it was a very positive challenge to all of us. Actively involved all through, Which leads me to our next point. We have to learn to listen to and learn from each other. It's great to learn from events, programs, like this podcast, even listening to people's questions, we can learn from. But it's even more important, we would say, to learn, to listen to, and learn from each other. It's part of not thinking we're better than others. It's part of having the humility to value my spouse. That in some areas, they know or do better than me. Miles Cohen, a dating and transformation coach, says, if you are not considering your partner's thoughts and feelings when you make decisions, they're most likely going to feel taken for granted. A relationship needs a team mentality to flourish. So let's not think we cannot learn anything from our spouse. Every person can learn something new from someone any day. Together with this, it helps us to avoid making assumptions. That's our next point. Avoid making assumptions. We often say in our counseling sessions, assumptions are the worst enemy of communication. And in relationships, when it comes to being taken for granted, we should not assume that the other person will always be there for us or that they will always forgive us. We have to show them that we value and respect them. That includes being attentive to them in our relationships. And as we said, there are times when we have to put away that technology and focus on the person with us. Be present and attentive. Two people can be sitting on the couch next to each other with a TV screen in front of them as if they're watching a movie, but really they're on their phones to each other. And one of the most telling images that often pops up in my mind, and we talk about it, my wife and I, was going to a restaurant. And then a younger couple walked in. They may have been at most in the early 30s, I would say. They were ushered to their seat, two-person table, so it looked cozy, intimate. And almost immediately, each one of them took out their phones. One holding the phone in their hand, one placed it on the table in front of them. And they began scrolling. Not a word to each other. The only time they lifted their heads was when the waiter came to take their orders. And one of them said, "What are you having?" And after the orders were taken by the waiter, their heads went down again onto the screens of their phones. And we just watched them. I nudged my wife to take a look. They barely said a word to each other. Were they really having breakfast together? Or maybe they were having breakfast with the people on their phones. Are you guilty of that? Am I guilty of that? Our next point is let's communicate openly and honestly. Talk to the other person about your partner, Talk to your partner, your spouse, about your needs, desires, and expectations. And listen to this also, because communication is a two-way street. It's not about one person. And then after we have both expressed our needs and concerns, we work together to find solutions. The trouble sometimes, our friends, is that we hear about concerns or needs about our partner and then do nothing about them. That hurts even more. And so, our next point is honor and fulfill your partner's needs as you are able to. And it starts by getting to know those needs. And while you always want to listen to yourself and be honest about what you need, it's important to make an effort to know about and honor your partner's needs as well. So we would recommend doing an assessment of your love languages together. It's a very simple one. Do an assessment of love languages. You can just even go online and talk about love language test or something. And there's several online free. And you can learn your love language. And then there's lots written about it. You will know about how to be able to meet each other's love language. Or the way we put it is how you can speak each other's love language. Trouble is we speak our own language, which may not be speaking love to the other person. And I'm not talking of the language of where you come from. I'm talking of love language, which sometimes is not in words. The Bible says in the Apostle Paul's letter to the Galatians, chapter 6, verse 2, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Sometimes our needs are like burdens on us, the things on our minds that we want to express, and yet don't feel the freedom in the relationship to express. Or we don't think our partner will even acknowledge what we're saying or even want to discuss with us. That's sad. And it's a situation we can easily reverse by making ourselves available. Which leads us to our next point. Allow and encourage each other to initiate activities. Allow and encourage each other to initiate activities. Some of you are already, you don't know my spouse. They don't do, every time they are waiting for me to do it. Some people are saying, if you knew my partner, every time I ask them to come up, they say, whatever I want, Well, here's the deal. A relationship involves two people. It is not about one person. So whether you are shy, an introvert, or you are outgoing, an introvert, an extrovert, everyone can have ideas for joint activities. Relationship expert and counselor David Bennett says, and I quote, "If your partner seems to be the one who initiates most things, you may be taking your partner for granted." End quote. Now let me say it again. If your partner seems to be the one who initiates most things, you may be taking your partner for granted. End quote. Maybe you're thinking, it's also, my partner is very good. What about you? You have no idea for anything? So even if you are someone who likes to go with the flow and your partner loves to plan, is always bubbling with ideas, keep in mind that it is important for you to actively also make some effort, come up with some idea in your relationship. Sometimes we talk with couples about dating each other, even as couples, yes, married people. But then after a while we review, one of them might say, I'm the one who always has to come up with something to do. And my spouse says, oh, whatever I want, they will also do. And that makes for a very boring life. Everyone has ideas. Come up with yours. And then in everything, sometimes, well, as with everything, sometimes we tend to prioritize other people over those closest to us. Sometimes it's even our jobs, a career, something we want to do. And we ignore the feelings, the concerns of a spouse or a partner. We all need to consider how the decisions we make affect our relationships. Not just in the short term, but even in the long term also. Because when somebody is taken for granted for a while, it might seem okay. But over the long haul, the relationship dies ever so slowly. That's why some people can be together for several years, and then bang, one day, they split. And everybody wonders, oh, they were such a nice couple. Oh, he was so gentle. Oh, I never heard her complain. Everything was kept inside. So, if you find it difficult to discuss these things we've said with your partner or your spouse, seek professional counseling. Seek professional assistance, I would say, through counseling. It's very important because sometimes it's because people don't have skills to be able to discuss things. Sometimes it's because they just don't know. Sometimes it's because they've learned the wrong things. Or sometimes they've learned things which may not be wrong in themselves, but they're not working with their partner or their spouse. And the counselor helps to unravel these things and then help you as a couple to be able to move forward in a much more harmonious and enjoyable manner. Friends, there's a saying that we often do not value or appreciate what we have until it's taken away from us. Sometimes this may be a relationship that breaks up, a marriage that ends in divorce, or even death. So let's all remember that sustaining a relationship, the relationships we have, and especially the ones with those closest to us, requires effort and work by each partner. So each of us needs to make the effort to show those closest to us that we value and appreciate them and that we are willing to work on our relationship. If yours is good, it can become better. If it has become better this year, it can still improve to become the best. We owe it to each other. If your spouse has been saying, we need counseling, let's see a counselor, don't take them for granted. Listen. Take heed and seek help. You can. We all can do better and enjoy better relationships with those closest to us. And on that note, we also want to say thank you again to you for listening to us and to Dr. Jacobs Abbey and his team for making this podcast available to you, making it available to us. To all of you listening to us all around the world, and to those who listen to this as a recording. Thank you, Dr. Jacobs Abbey. Thank you all for listening. God bless you. It's time now to hand over to Dr. Jacobs Abbey, and he'll take us through our questions and contributions. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Uncle Richard. Thank you for that powerful discussion. And folks, this is great. It turns out that we end up taking for granted those who really matters in our lives. And from all that Uncle Richard had discussed, it's important we pay attention to these concerns. We have couple of questions have come in, and in the meantime, if you want to send us a WhatsApp or a text message, you could do that. Country code +1, area code 571-337-9185, and we'll gladly read that on your behalf. In case you are on the conference line and you want to unmute yourself and ask a question directly, we welcome that as well. So without wasting much time, let's look at some of the questions that have come in so far. Uncle Richard, great presentation, and this is coming from Rwanda. Say, Uncle Richard, great presentation. What do you risk losing if you continue taking friends and families for granted? Their commitment, trust, and willingness to help. I don't understand the question well, Uncle Richard. Maybe you do. He said, what do you risk losing if you continue taking friends or families for granted? I think I will end there. That probably, yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Very important question. I alluded to it briefly in our presentation. I said, there's a saying that we often don't value or appreciate what we have until it's taken away from us. But earlier in our presentation, we also said, consider how life would be without those people in your life. And I'm going to think of some of the people we don't think much of, a babysitter. We might not think too much of them. But let's even focus on, as you say, the close people. As we give the example, you come home. Let's say, I'm just going to use this, you're a woman. You come home. You're tired already. When you arrive, your husband has prepared a meal. So, of course, well, if he also cooks, there's nothing wrong. So, what's the big deal? Okay? But consider, how would you be feeling if you came, there was no meal, and you had to do it all over from scratch? That's why it's important to show appreciation, And I'm sure in your mind, you can be think of what those people do for you. If they weren't in your life, how would it be like? Sometimes I think of things. One example we gave in our presentation was being handed over a glass of water. Imagine if you were eating and you wanted water to go with your food, and you could not get up. You were not in a position. You were not healthy enough to be able to get up and open a fridge to get cold water, even though the fridge were just a few meters from you. Then you value somebody handing you over a glass of water. That's what we mean by able to appreciate even the seemingly little things. They're all very important to us. You might have a mother, your mom, or your spouse's mom, who might be helping with children. You say, but she's the grandma. If the grandma looks after the children, it's no big deal. They are her grandchildren too. What if she didn't? We were once meeting with a couple, and we were talking about in-laws actually, and we asked, what comes to your mind when you think about in-laws? And the husband said, helpful. We said, so we asked, why do you say? Because the general connotation about in-laws is they are trouble causers. And he said, my mother-in-law lives with us. Since she came to live with us, she's been very helpful. In fact, it's because she's with the kids, that's why we are able to come and see you. So, if that mother were not there, or his mother were not, or mother-in-law wasn't there looking after the children, there are things they couldn't do. Think of how life would be without those people doing the things that they do for you in your life. You can do that about spouses. Who is she? Without me, she's nothing. What if she were not in your life? Some of you say, my life would be so much better. You don't want to try it. You know, that's why we said sometimes it's when the relationship breaks up or there's a divorce, then we begin to think, wow. In fact, I just want to throw in this. Research has shown that for men particularly, they're often very resistant to seeking counseling for marriage issues. But when there is a divorce, or sometimes a separation, men tend to devour books and all kinds of material on marriage. Why wait until things get so bad when we can learn and do better? So think of how those people closest to you, what they provide in your life, and value and appreciate them for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uncle Richard. A question coming from Nigeria, and he says, can you share examples of small gestures that can prevent taking someone for granted? I've heard you mention it, but unfortunately we don't have a good network, and so I missed some of them. I know I may go back to the podcast to listen, but for the sake of those who had similar challenges as mine, can you share examples of small gestures that can prevent taking someone for granted?
Small gestures that you can do for each other is saying thank you, learning to say thank you to everybody around you, to your spouse, to your children, to your siblings. When your daughter or son brings you a cup of water, say thank you. They are happy that they've done something for mommy or daddy and they're thankful. There are little things we can do. And when you want to ask someone to do something, say please. It doesn't mean you are belittling yourself. And when you say please, they are very happy to do it for you. There are small things you can do, small things you can say to each other. And if we don't get ourselves into that habit, we just say it. They do it, they do something for us, and we don't even, well, you have to, it's your duty, so we don't say anything. They don't feel appreciated. And sometimes they actually feel sad that you don't even realize. That's why you get people, husbands or wives, saying, all I'm doing, he doesn't see it. All I'm doing, she doesn't see it. Because they don't hear the thank yous. There are things you can start with. Learn to say please. Learn to say thank you. And when somebody has done something, encourage the person. Don't just overlook it as if you haven't seen. Say it. The person will be happy.
You know, Dr. Sam, it just occurred to me, I didn't completely answer the question from Rwanda. I think the first part of his question was, what do you risk losing?
That's right.
So what we risk losing is their contribution to our lives. That's what we risk losing, you know, to answer it more directly. You know, it might be, or this person washes your car, or this person does something particularly for you, you know. If you take them for granted, the day may come when they may say, oh, I do all these things for him, he doesn't even see it. I do all these things for her, she doesn't. Maybe they don't even like it, or they don't even want it. They will stop. And very often, because we work with couples, that's when people begin complaining. He used to do such and such when we first got married. He has stopped. She was like this, but now she was, what happened? Maybe, very often, that's where we trace it to. No acknowledgement or appreciation for what used to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is coming from Ghana. And it reads, so the issue of taking people for granted, is it a learned behavior or a societal behavior? I am saying this because it appears that at the beginning of every relationship, we tend to pay attention and very intentional in the relationship. But as the relationship grows, then we start taking people for granted, especially those who means a lot to us. How then the question is it possible to rebuild relationships after realizing you have been taken for granted? Thank you.
It's always possible to rebuild relationships. First of all, now that we are hearing these things, make it a point that you will not take each other for granted. The way you put energy into the beginning, you want to say all the thank yous, you want to bring up all the appreciation, you want to say please, let it flow throughout the marriage. Then you won't be taking each other for granted. And if you've realized that things are happening that way, most probably one person will bring it up that these days, you don't even say thank you when I do anything for you. Or, now you don't even say please. Now it's a command. When they bring it up, you can always do things, correct things and, even say, I'm sorry, I haven't been doing that. Or if you see that, your partner or your friend is taking you for granted, bring it out. Let the person know. Anything, you can always change it. You can always do better. So yes, you can always rebuild when you know that, you've not been doing it well. And if you are listening right now and you realize that maybe I've taken my friend or my partner for granted for a long time, you can change it. They may even ask you what happened to you. But hey, everybody loves change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now let's get to North America. We are in Canada now. So in Canada, it says that how does the fast-paced nature of modern life contribute to people taking their loved ones for granted? What can we do in order to have a balanced relationship so we don't take things for granted? Thank you.
Thank you. If we are fast-paced, sometimes we need to slow down and just check. Is my partner coming along with me? Is my spouse coming along with me? Or am I leaving them behind? Put in more practical terms, life is fast-paced because, or how do we get along with a fast-paced life? Because we adapt to it. So what about with our partners? What can we do so that they don't feel like we're leaving them behind? And do we care about what they're thinking or feeling, or are we focusing only on ourselves? You see, we can think of, I need to make it. I need to move ahead with the times, yes? But when you make it to the top, who will be there with you to celebrate your achievement? Will your spouse be celebrating with you? You expect. Maybe you are taking them for granted. Because along the way, you would have ignored, neglected, not listened to them. When you reach the top, you may realize you might be the only one celebrating. So let's take care of each other. And amidst all our busyness or our fast pace, it always feels better to run with somebody than running alone. And yes, sometimes they may slow us down. But running with somebody, you are less likely to note how long you've been running. Or even taking a journey with somebody who's engaging you in chatting and all that, rather than somebody sitting beside you asleep. The journey tends to go quicker. even though you might be taking the same time. When you're alone, it might be more difficult. And so, yes, one of the things we do very well in our fast-paced world, sometimes, I'll say not all of us, is to schedule everything. So the time for this, a time for that, a time for this. And in our presentation, we said, why don't we schedule some time for each other as well? Why don't we do that? You know, if you're a professional and you meet people according to some timetable, why don't you create one for you and your spouse too? That at such times and on these days, we are going to be with each other. And yes, just as you do with your other appointments, you don't move this around. In fact, this is the one appointment my wife and I you will find very difficult to get us to move. Anyway, you might not know that appointment is with each other because we keep it for ourselves. It's important. That's how we keep our relationship fresh. It's important that we do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uncle Richard. Thank you. Another question, this is coming from Springfield, Massachusetts. And it says that, one second. It says,
Sorry, your volume is low.
oh, okay. Is it better? Hello?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Okay, it should be better now.
Just go ahead. We'll try to listen because you still sound far away, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. So it says that, and this is from Springfield, Massachusetts. It says that, one second here. It said, are there instances where taking someone for granted can be justified or accepted?
We can't think of any situation where taking somebody for granted can be justified because the whole concept of taking somebody for granted is not valuing them. So, in what situation do we value people less? You know, it's important. You know, what we said was being taken for granted is a situation where we value someone too lightly. When we take people for granted, their true worth is neither seen, appreciated, or adequately celebrated. Why would we do that to people? We can't think of any situation to justify taking people for granted. We can understand making a sacrifice or asking them to make a sacrifice. In which case, we are acknowledging, you see, when we're asking somebody to make an exception for us, then it means we are acknowledging their importance to us. We're acknowledging their value. And we are allowing them to make that choice. We are not choosing for them. Because that also would be taking them for granted. That's really, really important. You know, and yes, there are many situations where we think, that's why we gave the example, oh, she should understand. Oh, I don't think he will mind. You know, but no, that's not right. And sometimes all we need to do is maybe send a text or make a quick call. Oh, you know what? I'm going to be a little longer at work today. Maybe it looks like I'll close an hour later. It's not only a courtesy, but it means we don't take the other person for granted. Think of all the things. If your child were in a creche or a place where you have to pick them up by 6 o'clock, you know, p.m. after you close, and you were going to stay at work an extra hour, would you not phone to find out if they could keep the child? Or if they couldn't, would we not make alternate arrangements? Why is it that when it comes to a spouse, somebody very close to us, we think it's okay not even to inform them? See how this is disrespect? We're not treating the person even fairly. We're not even giving them the chance to be able to decide what to do. So that's something we need to think about very carefully. We can't think of any situation that is in which it is justified to take somebody for granted. No, that is not right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uncle Richard. Another one from the US, this time from Pennsylvania. It says, now, how can one strike a balance between self-care and not neglecting those closest to them?
Striking a balance.
When you consider people close to you, you will not think only of yourself all the time. Yes, you need to take care of yourself, but you have to consider all around you too. So when you strike a balance, that means that you are thinking all round. Who are the people around me? How do I work with them? What do they do for me? What can I do for them? And you think of each other. There are times that, you may be doing things for everybody and neglecting yourself. That's what you're saying, that you need time for yourself also. So plan your everything. What time can you spend for yourself? What time do you spend with other people? So think of it. You have to draw your own program. We are not in your house. You know your house. You know the things that you do. So you can draw your own program and strike a balance. You know how to strike that balance. How much time can you have for each other, for your children? You put all that in and you can work with it.
Let me give the other side also that Vivian just began talking about. You just mentioned it just quickly. And I think we should also emphasize that striking the balance also means not taking up every request that is made to you. You might be the one who believes that people need your help. Or you may be so good that everybody is coming to you, so to speak. But do you have to help everyone? And are you the only one who can do it? That's something we need to think about, because we can become so stressed out, trying to deal with everybody's issue, so to speak, that we don't think about even our health sometimes. And what's going to happen to them if you fell ill, for example? Would their lives not go on? Some of us feel, we're so, or others need us so much that we don't think about ourselves. That's also not helpful. We strike the balance by, one of the points we made in our presentation was learning to say no sometimes. We're not superhuman. We cannot take on everything in this world. There are times when we should say no. For some of us, I'm going to bring you something that some of us don't even know how to take a vacation from our jobs. I think if we were not there, the work would collapse. And as I was told once when I fell ill as a young working man with a young family, my former boss told me, Richard, remember, if you fell dead, your office at best might be closed for that day. The next day, they will open. Very soon, they will find a replacement for you. So sometimes we take our own selves for granted, thinking we can operate non-stop. So we need to create periods of rest for ourselves. That includes being able to say no to something or someone else, so we can have that time to ourselves. And yes, Vivian and I consider times of rest. Sometimes they are an appointment on our calendar also, and we will not give them up. That's important. That's why we are able to continue working with and ministering to people all year round. We need to have that balance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uncle Richard. And those are thought-provoking insights. Very grateful. This is coming from New York. And it says, are there generational differences in how people perceive and handle being taken for granted?
Generational differences. I mean, I wouldn't go so much as call them generational differences, but they may as well be. I mean, older people tend to be set in their ways and they expect certain behaviors, certain actions. Younger people, and these are general observations, younger people tend to be more relaxed about specific ways of doing things and might be more open to trying or doing different things. So, yes, sometimes there are clashes. So, you have the younger generation clashing with the older generation in terms of how things should be done or when things should be done. A parent may have grown up in a household where when you were told to do something, it meant you did it right away. And so they can't understand why, a parent can't understand why they tell the child, go clean your room, and then 30 minutes later, they call the child, and the child is actually on a game in the room, and they're actually not cleaning the room. And so, yeah, I'm going to do it. I need to finish this game first. And it sounds like, what? You were supposed to have done this 30 minutes ago. So there are some of those adjustments we all have to make. It doesn't mean what the young person is doing is right, but it also means that the parent needs to understand that if you want them to do it right away, maybe you should actually say that they should do it right away. Because the times are different. And, our parents may have said, go and do it, and for us, we took it as right away. Our children might think, oh, I can finish this game first, or I can finish watching this first. And we need to make them understand what we really want to be done and how. So, yes, there might be some generational differences also in terms of expressing ourselves, when we are upset with something. So a younger person may be more likely to bring up something they don't want, but it also sometimes might have to do with their upbringing. If they've grown up in a home where children weren't allowed to express themselves, they may not, even though they're young, and unfortunately they may carry it into their marriages or their love relationships, you see. So even though they might be younger, they may also be set in their ways because they have been brought up that way. So those are differences that as couples we talk about. That's why we communicate with each other openly and honestly. These are things that need to come up. And especially if you are in a relationship, you're not yet married, make sure you discuss some of these things. Why do you do such and such? Or why don't you do such and such? And explain why you expect those things to happen or not to happen, because that's how you make progress in the relationship. That's how you grow to understand each other and can relate to each other better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uncle Richard. Wow, this is very powerful. I'm learning a lot. So this is coming from Nigeria. And it says, how do societal expectations and gender roles influence perception of being taken for granted? This is more academic.
Okay, I'll begin, and I think Vivian can add something to it here. You see, when we say societal pressures or expectations of how they come to influence some of these gender roles, for example. As we did say, in certain cultures, men are expected to behave a certain way. Women are expected to behave a certain way. So, if you're living in that culture, it might make it more normal, even though you might not like it. And what we say is that even if you're living in that culture, and it is something you do not like or want, it's important to voice it with the person you're dealing with. It helps to do so, because otherwise you're going to be upset every day. You'll be the angry person, which is also bad socially. And especially when we're talking about love relationships in a marriage, it's even more important. And what we do in our homes is in our homes. What we do behind closed doors is behind our closed doors. People might do what they want, or the society or the culture may dictate certain behaviors or expect certain behaviors, but it's up to us in the relationship to make or show the difference, you see. And yes, we do know, we have experienced it ourselves. You can be in a situation, men don't do this. Women are supposed to do that, like wash clothes or cook or do the dishes, things like that, But we can break some of these norms for our partner's sake. And like we often say, you're doing this in your home, it's not like you're doing it out on the street. And this is for you. It's important for you, plural, as a couple. These are things that you can agree on and do. So what if a man cooks? What if a man washes clothes? What if a man washes dishes? And in these days when, as we put it, there are working couples, both of us work outside the home, what happens when we both return? Is it time for the man to relax, but the woman continues working? And after meals, after she's cooked and served the meal, she also clears the table, does dishes. Come on, even humanly speaking, it's unfair, and sometimes it's just tiring. We both went to work, we're both tired. Can we help each other? Those are things we can learn to do. So there are those roles that make the man doesn't do this, it's a woman's job and things like that.
Whatever you do, if society, you think that society accepts some things, that's how it is done. If both of you are comfortable with it, there is no problem. If in your house you think that, some things women cannot do or men cannot do, and you are comfortable with it, you can go ahead. But once one of you is not comfortable with it, you have to think about it. Then we have to work out something. Some people say some things. I've heard some people giving examples to actually somebody giving an example to a lady and said, oh, if your husband doesn't come home and, you take it like that. My husband, he wasn't, the whole time. We've been married for so many years. He goes out, does all he sees, and when he comes, I just accept him like that. Maybe it was okay for that person. It's not okay for you. Don't take it. And sometimes the people who are even saying that was not okay for them. So just say because somebody did it, because somebody's wife did it, or somebody's husband, you give an example. And sometimes they are not even happy with the whole thing. And then they give it as an example. If yours is also like that, take it. No. We must have time for each other and not take each other for granted. So if once you are not okay, one of you is not okay with it, we have to talk about it and see what we can do. Don't just go with the crowd, because you are the person who should be enjoying your marriage, your life, not Don't build it on other people, what other people have done. If it's okay for them, fine. If it's not okay for you, don't just accept it.
Thank you very much, Auntie Vivian and Uncle Richie. Another question coming in, and also this is coming from Sierra Leone. And it says that, well, you understand that communication plays a very important role in every aspect of our being. What role does communication play in avoiding the pitfall of taking others for granted?
That means you talk about it. That is the communication. Talk about everything. Don't say, I won't say anything. It's okay. Or for the sake of peace, and there is no peace. That is what communication will do for you. Talk. Talk to your partner. Talk to people who are close to you and doing things that you don't appreciate, or you don't, about you are sad about something. Don't just keep quiet. Open your mouth and talk. That is what communication can do. You see, if you don't say it, the person doesn't know. Somebody may be doing something, and because you are not saying anything, they think you are okay with it. So if you are not okay with it, if it bothers you, open your mouth and talk. Let the person know that I'm not happy with this. This makes me sad. This doesn't make me happy. Let the person know. That is the first thing you have to do. Talk. That is why you are talking about communication. Talk to each other and let the message go. Let the person understand how you are feeling, what you are thinking. That is how you can work.
One of the ways we can make our communication effective in this regard is to have what for us has become, a principle we live by. In other words, when either of us raises an issue, the other person considers it important. The fact that my spouse has raised an issue, I consider it important. Even though I may think it's a small issue, even though I might think this is no big deal, I still have to consider it important because my spouse has brought it up. It's helped us through many rough times, and it's also helped us, giving us confidence to be able to raise any issue and to be able to talk about it without looking down on the other person, thinking, why are you bringing this thing up? This is not serious. No, what may not be serious to me might be hugely important to my wife. What she might think is major, I might think this is nothing. What she might think is small, I might think this is really serious. So we consider what either person brings up as important. Important enough to make time to listen to them, which is also one way of not taking people for granted. That is, making time to listen to what they have to say. And then secondly, putting an effort to come up with solutions to deal with whatever it is that the person has brought up. That's the other side of communication. Don't only listen, but putting an effort to do something about it. Something positive about it. Rather than say, oh, I hear, or I know. Worse, try to explain it away as not being serious. Treat every issue as important and serious enough to warrant your full focus and attention until it's properly dealt with. These little fires that become huge fires, or shall I say bonfires. Bonfires become raging wildfires if they are not dealt with by the two people and begin to get out to friends, family, then we lose control. So yes, let's make time to put out the little fires and they won't become bonfires in our relationship. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uncle Richard. Thank you. Another question, and this is coming from Virginia, and it says that how important is expressing gratitude verbally, and the emphasis is on verbally, to loved ones?
Very, very important. Everybody has to hear. So, not some people think that if you do some actions, the people will know that you appreciate what they're doing. Somebody told me that, well, if she cooks the food and I eat all the food, if it's not nice, I'll say it. So if I haven't said anything and I've eaten the food, she should know that I appreciate it. No. And then I told the guy, you see, the Bible says when you are hungry, even the bitter tastes sweet. So it's possible that maybe you were hungry. So you came and you ate the food. It doesn't mean that you like it. Or it doesn't show me that you like it. You have to open your mouth and say it. Don't assume that if you do some actions, then the person will know. We have to always be verbal. Open your mouth and say, don't assume that they will get it, or because they've done something that you like, maybe you bought a gift for the person. You haven't said anything. So it is important to verbalize it, open your mouth. It doesn't take long to say thank yous and, sorry for this, thank you, or please. They are not very long sentences. So you can do it. It doesn't take much time. And it covers a multitude of things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So another question, and also coming from the US, specifically New Jersey. And it says that, is it common to forget milestones like birthdays as the years go by? How can one prevent this? I am asking this question because in the last 22 years that my wife and I have been married, over the years, suddenly, with all honesty, I tend to forget her birthdays. Even when I put a note on my phone to remind me, I always miss it by a day, or I will wish her a day earlier. She gets upset and she thinks it's deliberate. This has gone on for the last 8 years or so. So my question is it common to forget milestones like birthday as the years goes by? And if so, how can one prevent this?
You can prevent it when you take it seriously. The only way that it becomes, you take each other for granted for that is that you don't take it serious. If you were doing it from the beginning of the marriage and now you forget, how were you, able to remember? And then now for the over 20 years and now for the past 8 years you forget. It means you are not taking it seriously. You can help yourself. You said you put reminders. Even tell your children to remind you that it is, mommy's birthday tomorrow or whatever. You can help yourself in so many ways because it is not something that people take lightly. If you didn't know, some people, they didn't know that growing up. They did not have that kind of life. That's one, even that you can learn. You can be taught. And you get into it. So if you were doing it and now you tend to forget, you will not be forgiven. You have to. It means that your wife will be thinking that you are not taking it seriously. You don't really care. So how about yours? You remember yours and do it for you, and are you happy about it when it is done for you? Put in an effort and do it very well. You know the month in which she was born, so maybe you can do something, practice something from the beginning of the month. You can put something there, whatever date it is, so many days more, for yourself, so that you remind yourself and do it. This is also nothing so serious you cannot do. Just wishing your partner a happy birthday. It is not something difficult, so you can do it. Take it seriously, and you can do it. Then you will not forget. Anything that you tend to forget, you are not really taking it seriously.
Thank you very much, to Vivian, and this is coming from Dallas in Texas. And he said, if you come to the realization that your partner has been taking you for granted over the years, how do you handle issues like that so that you are not taken for granted going forward?
Talk to your partner. Tell him or her all the things that you think they have done, which shows you, which makes you feel that you've been taken for granted. Talk to them, talk to the person. If they don't seem to understand, talk to someone that this partner respects, who can drive it in for him or her to understand, because you want to be understood. So talk to the person. If they are not getting it, talk to someone else who can reach out to them to get them to understand, because your aim is for the person to understand. You are not just complaining to people. Don't just complain to people. Talk to people who will be able to help, who your partner respects, who can talk to them to understand. That is ways you can do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is coming from Virginia. And it says that, how can we guard against transactional thinking in relationships? I am asking this question because my husband will celebrate and honor everyone around him, including his siblings, in-laws, and what have you. But my husband will almost say nothing positive about me to even inspire or encourage me. It is only when she sees that I am super annoyed and not talking to him, and to some point even deny him sex outright, then it comes to make a joke. You don't know how to take simple jokes. But how can this be considered a joke when I have talked about it and expressed how I feel about such behaviors for the last 9 years?
So it's obviously a situation that's upsetting. Vivian already gave some pointer in the previous answer, but where this is chronic, let's put it that way, seek help to counseling. And I would say work with a professional. Sometimes we might tell a pastor or tell an elder, but the person continues. And sometimes what happens in some of those sessions is people are given advice. You should do this, or be nice to your wife. You should stop doing this. And so it's more a matter of some do's and don'ts. But in counseling, often you get to the root of the matter, why this happens, why the person behaves the way they do. And in the process, then the solutions also are generated. So this is not to put down the person, but actually to help them even understand why they don't do it. Because maybe you've told your pastor, maybe you've told elders, maybe you've even told friends, and the person persists in doing it. So there is no, we would say, rather than get annoyed about it, this is when you actually say, look, we need to get help. We like to say we because it's both of you who are affected by the behavior. Even though it's one person who's the source of the behavior, the other person, our partner, is also affected by it. So we need help. And then we, yes, the two, talk with or work with a professional counselor in this regard. What we have found is that when couples are really willing, by 4 sessions, they're really practicing some of the things they're learning. They begin to see a turnaround in their relationship. So don't let this continue brewing in you, making you angry, and like you said, you get to the point where you deny him sex or maybe some other things you will not do to show you are angry or annoyed before he takes action. And on the other hand, for every one of us, it's really important, it's really sad, perhaps even tragic, that it's those closest to us that we abuse in this way, that we often do not say good things about. We're very quick to promote negative behaviors. And I'm using promote in terms of, or I should say even broadcast, their negative behaviors. We should rather major on the things that each other does so well. Share these things. Hey, guess what my wife did? Hey, can you believe what my husband did for me, this weekend? Let's share these things because they are encouraging. And let's not only tell other people. As we said earlier, the first person to hear must be the one who's doing the right thing. Because it encourages us to do more. That's important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have 2 more questions here. By the way, in case you are on the line and you want to ask a question, you are also welcome to unmute yourself and you can ask your question directly. The other question here, which is coming from New York, and it says that, how do you properly thank those who make sacrifices for your well-being to the extent that they will recognize that you sincerely appreciate their sacrifices?
It's talking about how you can thank them properly.
Yes.
First of all, say it.
Yes. Number 1. Say it
to them. And another way you can do it is tell other people to thank them for you.
Yep.
Then it makes them see that you are realizing. Another way you can do it to maybe sometimes give them a gift. Mm-hmm. Give them something to show that I appreciate what you are doing. Mm-hmm. So it's up to you. First, say it. And also tell others also. That you say, I've seen people who even tell other people to thank their children for what the children are doing. It makes the children feel that, yeah, mommy or daddy sees what I'm doing. When somebody comes to me, oh, thank my son, thank my daughter for all that she's doing. Yes. Then they see you are not taking them for granted. So say it, open your mouth and tell them. And also tell others also to tell them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the way you can even do to say it in their presence. When you are telling someone else, in their presence. Mm-hmm. Let them see that you really appreciate what they are doing.
Thank you. That's good.
Thank you. The last question I have here is also coming from Nigeria, and it says that I believe Uncle Richard touched it briefly when he was presenting. And my question is, it appears that most of us only take our loved ones seriously, but the external individuals who complement our relationships, sometimes we don't even recognize their relevance in our relationships. For instance, the gate man or the security man at the door. Nobody seems to pay attention to them, yet they are the reason why we could sleep safely. The babysitter, we sometimes think because we are paying them money, they are doing service. But even if we pay them money, they are the reason why we can do other things. So why is it that we only pay attention to our loved ones in terms of husband and wife or fiancés, but these external people, we take them for granted? Thank you.
Very good point. I think Uncle Richard talked about that a little bit, but yes, we have to appreciate everybody around us. The person who does anything for you, we have to let them see that we appreciate what they are doing, even if we are paying them for it. In fact, the person who comes to your house just to wash your car, even if you give him something small and you are thinking that it's because of what I give him that he comes to wash the car, still say thank you. It will make them see that you appreciate what they are doing. So yes, you are right. Everybody around us, we must talk to them, first of all, talk to them with respect and not talk down to them. And then let them see that we appreciate what they are doing. It makes them even do it better. In fact, you're saying thank you and being nice to the waiter in the restaurant makes them treat you very nicely. And those who have been nasty to waiters, sometimes we hear stories what they do. You don't know what they do to your food before they bring it to you. But when you are nice to them, say thank you. Of course, you are paying them. And you might even give them a tip and all that. But say thank you to them. Make them see that you appreciate them. In fact, I'll say this for Uncle Richard. He taught me so much about saying thank yous and appreciating people. Just because he is nice to people everywhere, some people who shouldn't be nice to him are nice to him. In fact, people just turn around and do things for him, and we are always amazed. In fact, somebody came to this house to repair our telephone line, and the thing was so bad, so he had to go back and maybe they have to change everything to cost us so much. Just because he was nice to the person, the guy goes to sit in his car for a few minutes. He came back and told our daughter, you know what, I want to do this for you because I like your dad. I'll do it for him for free. He came to do everything, and true, the bill came no charge. Just because he is nice to people. We went to the airport once and the flight had been cancelled and everybody was being nasty to the people there. He smiled to them, talked to them, told them we had a really difficult day, right? And you will not believe it. She changed our flight and everything, gave us all people were rerouted to some time, and she changed it for us and said, don't tell anybody, just go. Just being nice. When you learn to be nice to people, you get a lot of privileges everywhere. From the very beginning of our marriage, he taught me that you don't call anybody driver. He's not a driver. He's Mr. So-and-so. You don't call your mate just by the name. If the person is older, Your children call her auntie so and so. And, treat them nice. They will also be nice to you. We have to learn it. Be nice to everybody. Yes, maybe you think that they are in need. That's why they are serving you. But if you treat them nice, you get so much bonus. Things that you don't expect they will do to you. So thank you. It is a very good point that you have made.
Awesome. Well, other than that, there is no other question in, and so I hand over to you, Mr. and Mrs. Crab, for a wrapper. Oh wait, there's a question. There's a question came on YouTube. He said, a very good question. In the body of Christ, we sometimes don't respect and honor each other. We look and honor people who have titles. Okay, I believe that she's contributing to the earlier question. So it's just a contribution, and he says that a very good question. In the body of Christ, we sometimes don't respect and honor each other. We look and honor people who have titles and ignore others.
That is true.
Okay.
That is true.
It's true.
We
Okay.
do that. So we have to all learn to give honor to everybody.
And not to take anyone for granted. All right. So, in conclusion, let me restate one aspect of this because we want to bring back the focus on our closest relationships, and especially when you're talking of love relationships. There are many relationships where only one partner seems concerned about the relationship's development and the other person doesn't. We often hear one spouse, for example, sounding alarmed or deeply concerned about how the relationship is going. Yet the spouse or partner thinks there is no problem. If your partner is the one who always suggests improving communication, working things out, or even getting help for your relationship, such as counseling, you may be taking them for granted. Don't take it lightly. Act quickly. Better now than to lose the relationship or have it weaken. Many of us many couples end up with weakened relationships. They may not break up, they may not divorce, but the relationship is weakened and they never really enjoy the full potential of that relationship. That's part of why we do what we do. And that's why we're happy and thankful that you've listened until now. And also, that's why we say thank you for listening. And thank you to Dr. Jacob Sabe and his team at the Inspired Podcast. Without you, we couldn't get this all over the world. So we're grateful. Thank you all. God bless you. And we'll look forward to being with you before December is out. Yes, definitely we'll be on with our next program, third week in December, before Christmas. So be ready, be prepared to be inspired for the end of the year. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye. God bless all of you, and we'll see you next year. Next month. Thank you.
This session is no longer being recorded. Goodbye.